Okay, so this is Go Math, Chapter 12, Lesson 2, 12.2. And we were talking about data and we're talking about statistics, and now we want to start describing our data. Okay, so these pieces of data, what are we doing with them? How are we describing them? How are they going to work? So we talked about what a statistical question was in 12.1. And that, of course, is something that needs lots and lots of points of data. But now we want to be able to intelligently talk about that data. Okay, so if we said Mr. W has 5 baseball cards, right? And they're worth a lot of money. So my 5 baseball cards, I have one that's worth $120. I have one that's worth $150. I have one that's worth $2. I have one that's worth $900. And I have a Honus Wagner, which is worth $1.1 million. There's a big range there. First off, I don't know anybody who has a Honus Wagner $1 million baseball card that only has one baseball card. But if I were going through these and I say, okay, I have 5 pieces of data, how would I describe this to people? Well, you would say that the data that I'm taking is on baseball cards. That's what I'm talking about. I am talking about money in dollars, so I have a unit that I'm using to describe it, right? And I might talk about the range. I have cards ranging everywhere from $2 to $1.1 million. But overall, you would say, well, Mr. W has a lot of expensive baseball cards. I don't, so please don't hold me to that. But what would that look like in your book? So first, Jeff's hobby is collecting rocks and minerals, and the chart gives data on garnets, and I'm going to move this over here so you can see it. Gives data on garnets he found during a recent mineral hunting trip. Identify, I got a couple different pieces that I want to identify here. And if I open this up, they're going to help me. First off, I want to identify what's being measured. What are we talking about here? What unit am I using to measure, right? Just like my baseball cards, I'm measuring in dollars, and American dollars at that. The likely means by which measurements were made, how do we measure them? So the value of my baseball cards might be on an appraisal. These are talking about mass and the number of observations. Okay, so now when I'm describing the data that I'm collecting in the statistics, I have specific points that I want to describe that give a full picture. Just like our statistical question gave a full picture of a lot of different data points to represent an idea that we really want to try and get that's pretty accurate, right? I need this to describe that data as well. Now, the attribute being measured. Well, what are we measuring? We are measuring, out of all of these stones, they're garnets, we are measuring their mass. And the unit of measure, how am I measuring their mass? I'm measuring it in grams. The likely means by which measurements were made. Well, how would I measure the mass in grams? I would probably weigh it. And the number of observations. 1, 2, 3, 4, I have 12 observations. So now, we talk about speaking intelligently. So if I'm somebody and I'm recording something like this, and I'm trying to explain this to a group of scientists, I would say, oh, well, you know, Jeff's hobby really paid off. So he collected a lot of garnets. So he was measuring the mass in grams, and when he looked at the weight, he noticed he took 12 different samples and found an average weight of this. So I know, well, my average weight, or the average age of the group of 3 people might be 20, but none of those people are 20. Now that I know that I have a lot of different pieces of data, I know that it's well represented what it is that I'm measuring. So again, the things that you're talking about measuring, what is being measured, the unit that I'm measuring in, the means by which I'm measuring it, and the number of observations. So whether we're talking about baseball cards or we're talking about the weight of garnet stones, you need to be describing the data that you're collecting at all times.